Henry Dawson walked past the Silver Spur Saloon with his daughter's hand tucked in his. Both bundled against January wind. Through the grimy window, lamplight caught a girl's face, 16. Maybe 17 stacking glasses with hands too young for the work. Their eyes met. 1 second. She looked away first. "Papa, that girl looks sad." Joy tugged his sleeve, her breath making small clouds in the cold air. "Why is she in there?" Henry pulled his coat tighter and kept walking. "Some folks got their own road to walk, sweetheart." But the words felt hollow, even as he spoke them. The image burned behind his eyes, the girl's hollow gaze, her worn calico dress, shoulders too thin beneath the fabric. She'd been wiping down tables like she was trying to erase herself along with the spills. Main Street emptied as dusk deepened. Lanterns flickered to life in cabin windows. Henry's boots crunched through snow that had fallen steady all week. Cold springs. Montana wore winter like a second skin this time of year. She looked like she needed help, Joy said quietly. Henry glanced down at his daughter. 8 years old, dark braids poking from beneath her wool cap. She had her mother's eyes seeing past surfaces to the hurt underneath. "Can we help her, Papa? That's complicated, Joy." Why, because the world was hard and he'd learned to keep his circle small. Because 2 years after losing Ruth, he'd finally found a rhythm that didn't tear him apart every morning. Because letting someone new in meant risking that fragile peace. He didn't say any of that. "Some things aren't ours to fix," he said instead. Joy fell quiet, but her small hand gripped his tighter. They reached their cabin at the edge of town. Henry lit the lamp inside, and warm light spilled across the simple room. Table and chairs. Stove radiating heat. 2 beds in the back room. Everything they needed. Nothing wasted. He made supper while Joy set out plates. Venison stew. Cornbread from yesterday. They ate in comfortable silence, the way they'd learned to do. But when he tucked Joy into bed that night, she looked up at him with those serious eyes. "Mama used to say we should help people when we can." Henry's throat tightened. Joy rarely spoke about Ruth. He'd thought maybe she was forgetting. And the idea brought equal parts relief and grief. "Your mama was right," he managed. "Then why can't we help that girl?" He had no answer ready. Just kissed her forehead and turned down the lamp. Later, lying in his own bed, Henry stared at frost glowing silver on the window. "Out here, you mind your own fences and let others tend theirs." That's what men told themselves to sleep at night. But sleep wouldn't come. He kept seeing the girl's face through dirty glass, kept hearing Joy's question echoing in the dark. Joy pushed her oatmeal around the bowl. "Papa, why does a girl work in a saloon?" Henry's spoon paused mid-air. Saturday morning sunlight slanted through the window, bright but cold. He'd hoped she'd forgotten. "Sometimes people don't have many choices," he said carefully. "But why doesn't she have choices?" "Eat your breakfast, sweetheart." Joy obeyed, but he could feel her thinking. The silence felt heavier than her questions. Later, at the general store. Martha Doyle was restocking shelves when Henry came in for flour and coffee. The older woman had lived in Cold Springs longer than anyone. Knew every soul in their business. "Heard you met young Nell Winslow," Martha said, not looking up from the canned goods. Henry blinked. "I didn't meet anyone." "Your Joy did. Girl mentioned it to me yesterday." Martha turned, her weathered face kind but knowing. "The Winslow girl who works at the Silver Spur." Henry set his items on the counter. "We just walked past." "Well, that poor child's story would break your heart." Martha began tallying his purchases. "Parents died last spring of fever. Had an aunt over in Billings. But the woman turned her out. Said she couldn't feed another mouth. And Warren Kent took her in. Gave her work, least he says." Martha's mouth thinned. "Serving drinks, cleaning tables. Could be worse, I suppose. Could be she's on the street." Henry handed over coins. "Could be better, too." Martha looked at him sharp. "World ain't built for better. Henry, Just survival. You know that as well as anyone. He gathered his parcels. Maybe? A man's conscience is the only law that follows him home at night, Martha said softly. You'll do what you think is right. You always have. Walking back through the cold, Henry thought about that. What was right? He had his own daughter to think about, his own grief still healing, his own life to manage. But Joy's voice came back to him as he opened their cabin door. Could we help her? Papa. The cabin was warm and safe. 2 beds, not 3. 2 chairs at the table. Room enough for what they had. Room enough for 3, too. The thought came unbidden and unwelcome. He pushed it away. But it lingered at the edges like smoke that wouldn't clear. That night, banking the fire, he remembered Ruth's voice. Not the memory of it, he was losing that. The exact pitch and rhythm, but her words. Take care of our girl, Henry, and anyone else who needs it. He'd thought she meant just Joy. Made sense to think that. Now he wondered if she'd meant something more. The Reverend's voice echoed through the cold church. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Henry sat with Joy in their usual pew, 3rd from the front. The wooden bench was hard. The Franklin stove in the corner doing its best against winter seeping through the walls. Around them, the good people of Cold Springs bowed their heads. Henry watched his daughter pray and felt Ruth's absence like a physical ache. 2 years, and some mornings he still woke expecting to see her. Take care of our girl, she'd whispered at the end. Then, weaker. And anyone else who needs it. He'd been so focused on the first part, he'd let the second slip away. After the service, people gathered outside despite the cold. Henry was helping Joy with her coat when he saw the girl walking alone on the frozen road that led back. Toward town. Nell Winslow. That was her name. She wore a thin shawl over the same worn dress. Her steps were quick, head down, heading back to the Silver Spur, he realized. Back to Warren, Kent, and whatever life she'd cobbled together there. Joy saw her too. Before Henry could react, his daughter was running down the church steps. Miss, wait! The girl turned, startled, up close. Henry could see she was younger than he'd thought, 16 at most. Face thin, but pretty. Eyes wary as a deer's. Would you like Sunday dinner? Joy asked breathlessly. Papa makes good stew. The girl Nell stared at Joy like she'd spoken a foreign language. I couldn't impose. It's not imposing if we asked. Joy grabbed her hand. Right, Papa. Henry had followed slower. Now he stood a few feet away, seeing Nell's expression shift from shock to desperate hope to careful resignation. Sir, I thank you, but our door's open, Henry heard himself say. Just for today. Hospitality ain't charity, it's what separates men from wolves. Reverend Hale had said that in his sermon. Maybe Henry had been listening after all. Nell's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back hard. I don't want to trouble you. No trouble, Henry said, and meant it. Come on before the stew gets cold. They walked together toward his cabin. Joy in the middle chattering about her wooden horse in the snow and how Papa made the best cornbread in Montana. Nell said nothing, just walked with her thin shawl pulled tight. At the door, Henry gestured her inside. Lamplight spilled onto the snow. Nell hesitated on the threshold, looking into the warm room like it was something from a dream. Come in, Henry said gently. She stepped across. The door closed behind her. Henry had said just for today. Already, standing in his own home with this quiet, broken girl looking around like she'd stumbled into grace itself. He knew it was a lie. Nell sat at the table like she might shatter if someone spoke too loud. Joy filled the silence with Chatter, her doll. Her primer. The horse Papa was carving for her birthday. Henry ladled stew into 3 bowls. The 3rd bowl had sat unused in the cupboard for 2 years. It's hot, he warned, setting it before Nell. Let it cool a minute. Thank you. Her voice was barely a whisper. She ate slowly, eyes down. Her hands trembled holding the spoon. Henry pretended not to notice, but he saw everything. The way she kept glancing at the door, the careful way she chewed, like food was still something precious and rare. The barely audible sigh when she swallowed the first bite. "Do you like reading?" Joy asked suddenly. Nell looked up, startled. "Yes, I do." "Will you read from my primer? Papa reads fine, but he's got a man's voice. It's nicer when ladies read." Pink touched Nell's pale cheeks. "If your father doesn't mind." Henry gestured to the small bookshelf. "Go ahead." After dinner, which Nell insisted on helping clean despite his protests. They settled by the fire. Joy brought her primer and thrust it into Nell's hands. The transformation was immediate. Nell's voice, which had been small and uncertain, gained strength as she read. She knew how to give each word weight, how to pause for effect. She wasn't just reading, she was telling the story. Henry sat in his chair, carving a piece of cedar, and watched. In the firelight, the saloon's shadow fell away from her. She looked like what she was supposed to be, a young woman with education and grace. Someone's daughter who should have been sitting in a parlor somewhere reading to younger siblings, not serving drinks to men twice her age. "You read well," he said when she finished the page. "Someone taught you proper." Nell's hands tightened on the book. "My mama, before..." She stopped. Couldn't finish. "She taught you good," Henry said quietly. Joy leaned against Nell's shoulder, yawning. Within minutes, the child was asleep, her small body relaxed and trusting. Nell froze. Tears streamed down her face, silent and devastating. Henry rose, gathered Joy carefully. "I'll just put her to bed," when he returned. Nell had wiped her face. She stood near the door, shawl already around her shoulders. "I should go. Thank you for your kindness." "You're welcome here any time," Henry said, and meant it more than he'd meant anything in a long while. Nell nodded, not quite meeting his eyes. Then she was out the door, walking quickly into the dusk. Henry watched from the window until she disappeared toward town. Then he turned back to the cabin. The measure of a home ain't in its size, but in who's welcome at the table. 3 bowls sat by the basin, waiting to be washed. The fire crackled softly. Joy's primer lay on the chair where Nell had been sitting. The cabin felt emptier now than it had before she came. Loneliness had a new shape. The absence of someone who'd just fit perfectly into a space he hadn't known was open. Nell came back 3 days later. Joy had begged, and Henry had said maybe. And then Nell appeared at dusk with that same careful knock. She brought nothing, asked for nothing, just stepped inside when he opened the door and helped Joy with her letters like it was the most natural thing in the world. It became a pattern. 3 evenings that week, then 4 the next. Warren Kent let her go early when the saloon was slow, small mercy, though Henry suspected the man had his reasons. Probably figured a girl working for him was less likely to run if she had somewhere safe to visit. February settled in, snow falling steady but gentle. The cabin took on a different rhythm those evenings. Joy's laughter, Nell's quiet voice, the scrape of Henry's knife against cedar as he carved. Tonight, Joy fell asleep mid-story, her head on Nell's shoulder. Nell went still. Then her shoulders shook, tears falling silent into the child's dark hair. Henry set down his carving, gathered Joy carefully, the way he'd done a dozen times, carried her to bed and tucked the quilts around her small form. When he came back, Nell was standing, wiping her face with her sleeve. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't..." "Don't apologize," Henry said. She looked at him then. Really looked. Her eyes were the color of creek water, clear and sad. "I've never..." She just... "I know." They stood in the lamplight, the fire crackling low. Outside, snow tapped softly against the windows. "What happened to your family?" Henry asked gently. Nell's breath caught. For a moment, he thought she wouldn't answer. Then the words came, halting but true. Fever took them. Mama first, then Papa 3 days later. I went to my aunt in Billings. She said she couldn't feed another mouth, turned me out. Her voice was flat, reciting facts. I came back here, tried to find work. Warren Kent was the only one who'd hire me. You've been at the Silver Spur since a year now. I save what I can. Thought I'd have enough to leave by now. But she shook her head. There's never enough. Henry moved to the stove, poured coffee from the pot that was always warm, handed her a cup. She took it with both hands, like the warmth was something precious. You don't belong there, he said quietly. Nell laughed, but there was no humor in it. Where do I belong then? The question hung between them. Henry wanted to say here. Wanted to say she belonged at this table, by this fire, reading to Joy and being something more than a girl trying to survive. But fear stopped his tongue. Somewhere better, he said instead. Somewhere safe. Nell looked at him over the rim of her cup. I've been safe here. These evenings, they're the only time I remember what that feels like. She set down the coffee, wrapped her shawl around her shoulders. At the door, she paused. Thank you, Mr. Dawson, for letting me pretend. You're not pretending, Henry said. This is real. She smiled, sad and sweet. Then she was gone into the cold. Henry stood at the threshold literal doorway watching until she disappeared. When he turned back, he saw her needle and thread tucked in Joy's mending basket, a book she'd been reading to his daughter. Marker still in place, pieces of her already living here. Truth shared by firelight binds folks tighter than blood, his father used to say. Henry banked the fire and went to bed, but sleep was a long time coming. Mrs. Clara Barrett cornered Henry by the flour barrel at the general store. Her voice carried across the room, sharp as January wind. Folks are talking. Henry Dawson. That saloon girl in your home with your daughter. Every head turned. Martha Doyle paused mid-sweep. Two farmers by the door stopped their conversation. Henry kept his voice level. Miss Winslow visits sometimes. She reads to Joy. She works in a saloon. Mrs. Barrett's mouth was a thin line. We all know what kind of girls do that. She's an orphan trying to survive. There's surviving and there's propriety. You're a widower with a young daughter. Think about appearances. Heat climbed Henry's neck, but he held his tongue. Arguing with Clara Barrett in public was like wrestling a badger. Even if you won, you'd be torn up. He paid for his flour and left. But that afternoon, Reverend Hale stopped by the cabin. The older man was kind, hat literally in hand as he stood on the porch. Henry, I want you to know I don't hold with gossip, but I'd be failing you as a friend if I didn't mention folks are concerned. About what? About Miss Winslow spending time here, with Joy present. Reverend Hale shifted his weight. I know your heart's in the right place, but think about your daughter's reputation. Think about Ruth's memory. That stung. Henry's jaw tightened. Ruth told me to take care of anyone who needed it. That's what I'm doing. I understand. Just be careful. Son, the world judges, whether we like it or not. After the Reverend left, Henry stood on his porch staring at nothing. The weight on his chest felt like a millstone. That evening, when Nell came to the door, he couldn't meet her eyes. Nell, I think maybe you shouldn't visit for a while. The silence was terrible. I understand, she said finally. Her voice was hollow, all the warmth drained out. I knew it couldn't last. It's not about you. It never is, she smiled. And it broke his heart. Thank you for the kindness while it did last. Mr. Dawson, you and Joy, you gave me something I'll remember. She turned to leave. Nell, it's all right, really. I should have known better than to hope. She walked away into the dusk. Didn't look back. Henry closed the door and leaned against it. Joy came out of her room, face blotchy with tears. Why can't Nell come anymore? Did we do something wrong? No, sweetheart. It's complicated. You said complicated before. I still don't understand. Joy's voice rose, anguished. Mama said to help people when we can. Why won't you help Nell? She ran back to her room. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like judgment. Henry sat at the table. 3 chairs, only 2 ever used now. The lamp burned low, casting long shadows. Fear of what folks think can cage a man tighter than iron bars. He'd let fear win. Told himself it was wisdom, protection, the right choice. But wisdom didn't explain why the house felt hollow. Protection didn't ease the ache in his chest. And the right choice didn't make his daughter weep or leave a good girl out in the cold. A week passed. Joy barely spoke. She picked at her food, wouldn't smile. The cabin filled with a silence worse than grief. Henry tried to read to her one evening. She turned away. I miss Nell, she whispered. I know. Then why? I don't know. Joy, I don't know. But he did know. He'd chosen safety over courage. Reputation over righteousness. The approval of Clara Barrett over the pleading in a young girl's eyes. He'd chosen wrong, that night, lying awake. He heard Ruth's voice as clear as if she'd spoken aloud. Take care of anyone else who needs it. Not just when it was easy. Not just when no one gossiped. Not just when fear didn't tighten its grip. Anyone who needed it. Joy pushed her plate away. Oatmeal untouched. Her small face was set in lines too serious for 8 years old. Mama said to help people. Why won't you help Nell? Her voice cracked on the last word. Henry's chest seized. Joy never talked about Ruth. For 2 years. She'd carried her grief silent and small. Now it poured out, raw and accusing. Your mama! Mama said we should help. She said that's what makes us good. Tears streamed down Joy's face. Are we not good anymore? Papa. Henry had no answer. His daughter stared at him, waiting. Then she slid off her chair and went to her room. The door closed. Not slammed, that would have been easier. Just closed. Quiet disappointment. Henry sat alone as dawn broke gray and cold outside. That afternoon, he walked to the cemetery at the edge of town. Ruth's grave was marked with a simple wooden cross. Her name and dates carved careful. Henry had made it himself, working through grief with his hands because he couldn't work through it any other way. He sat in the snow beside her and talked aloud. I'm afraid. Ruth. Afraid of losing what we have. Afraid of what people think. Afraid of caring too much and having it ripped away again. The wind stirred, cold and clean. You said take care of anyone who needs it. I thought you just meant Joy. I thought... His voice broke. He pressed his palms against his eyes. I thought keeping her safe meant keeping everything else out. But I was wrong. I taught her fear matters more than love, that approval matters more than mercy. That's not what you wanted. That's not who we're supposed to be. The wind gentled. Sun broke through clouds, painting the snow gold. Henry stood, brushed snow from his pants, looked at Ruth's cross one more time. I'll do better. I promise. He walked into town. The silver spur squatted on the corner like a stain on clean cloth. Henry waited outside, breath steaming in the cold. Dawn was breaking proper now, painting the eastern sky pink and gold. The saloon door opened. Nell emerged with a mop bucket, her shawl thin against the cold. She saw him and froze. Mr. Dawson. I was wrong. The words came clear and true. Fear made me choose poorly. Nell shook her head. You were protecting Joy. That's what fathers do. No, I was protecting myself. Henry took a step closer. From caring too much, from risking pain again, from doing what's right when it costs something. Nell's hands tightened on the bucket handle. What are you saying? You belong in the light, not here. His voice was steady now. Sure. Come home. Stay. The words hung in the cold air between them. People will talk, Nell whispered. They'll make life hard for Joy. Let them talk. I'm done listening to fear louder than I listen to right. You'd risk everything. You're not a risk. Henry held her gaze. Your family. Nell's face crumpled. Tears came, and this time she didn't hide them. The bucket fell from her hands, water splashing into the snow. Courage ain't the absence of fear, it's saddling up despite it. Henry extended his hand. Not romance covenant, family invitation, promise of home. Nell took it, trembling. Sun broke over the mountains, painting them gold. They walked toward the cabin together, side by side, past windows where curtains twitched, past doors where judgment lived. Henry didn't look back. At his threshold, he opened the door. Warmth spilled out. Joy appeared, saw Nell, and ran into her arms with a cry of pure joy. You came back. I came home, Nell whispered into the child's hair. This time, when Nell crossed the threshold, she wouldn't leave. Nell's belongings fit in one cloth bag. A spare dress, a hairbrush, a small wooden box with her mother's wedding ring inside. Everything she owned in the world. Henry gave her the small room off the kitchen. Ruth's sewing room, unused for 2 years. Joy helped make the bed, chattering joy and plans and questions. Can you teach me to sew proper? Can you read more stories? Will you stay forever? Nell smiled. Real smile. Reaching her eyes. As long as your father lets me. Forever then. Joy announced with absolute certainty. For 3 days. Peace settled over the cabin like fresh snow. Nell washed dishes and mended clothes and helped with the garden planning. Joy was radiant, laughter returning to the small rooms. Henry carved and watched and felt something in his chest unknot. Then Sunday came. They walked to church together. Henry, Joy, Nell as a unit, 3 instead of 2. The church fell silent when they entered. Every head turned. Conversations died mid-word. Mrs. Clara Barrett's mouth hardened into a line sharp enough to cut. Others looked away quickly, uncomfortable. Reverend Hale paused in greeting families at the door. His expression was carefully neutral. Henry felt Nell tense beside him. Her step faltered. Keep walking, he murmured. They sat in their usual pew, Joy in the middle, holding Nell's hand. The whispers started, rustling through the church like wind through dry leaves. Reverend Hale preached on mercy. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Yet how often do we speak mercy and forget to practice it? His eyes swept the congregation. Some shifted in their seats. After service, people gathered for fellowship in the small yard. Coffee and conversation, the usual Sunday ritual. Mrs. Barrett approached, 2 other women flanking her like soldiers. Her voice carried, meant to be heard. Henry Dawson, this is improper. That girl has no place in a decent home. Certainly not with your daughter present. The yard went quiet. Everyone watching. Henry stood. Felt Joy's small hand slip into his. Felt Nell trembling beside him. Her name is Nell Winslow. We know what she is. Mrs. Barrett's voice was ice. We know where she worked. She's an orphan who survived the only way she could. Henry's voice was calm but iron underneath. She's lost her family, endured hardship with more grace than most of us could manage. And she's under my protection now. She's family. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Barrett's face flushed red. You'd bring shame into your home. Ruth would be horrified. Ruth told me to help anyone who needed it. Henry's voice rose for the first time. She'd be horrified I didn't do it sooner. Silence fell, thick and tense. Then Martha Doyle stepped forward. The old woman moved slow. Leaning on her cane, she stopped beside Henry. He's right. Her voice carried authority earned through decades. We preach mercy every Sunday, sing hymns about grace. But when mercy stands before us asking for shelter, we turn our backs and call it propriety. 2 other families moved to stand with them, then another. Mrs. Barrett looked around, seeing her support crumbling. This is ridiculous. You're all welcome. Reverend Hale's voice cut through hers. He walked to Nell, extended his hand. Welcome to our church, Miss Winslow. I hope you'll join us regular. Nell stared at his hand, then took it. Her voice shook. Thank you, Reverend. Mrs. Barrett made a sound of disgust and stalked away. 3 others followed her, but more stayed. Forming a loose circle that felt almost protective, Martha touched Nell's arm gently. You come by the store this week. We'll get you some proper cloth for dresses. Joy beamed up at everyone. See, I told you folks would like her. Soft laughter rippled through the group. The tension broke. Not completely, but enough. Walking home. 3 in a row. Joy skipped ahead. Nell walked close to Henry, her shoulders finally relaxing. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Yes, I did. Henry glanced at her. For you. For Joy. For me. For what's right. Nell's eyes filled, but she smiled through it. Thank you. At the cabin. Joy ran inside to start dinner. Nell paused on the porch, looking back toward town. They won't all come around, she said. I know. Mrs. Barrett will make trouble. I know. Are you sure about this? Henry met her eyes. I've never been more sure of anything. A man who won't stand for what's right might as well be a fence post, takes up space but got no spine. He'd found his spine, finally. March gave way to April. Snow retreated, leaving mud and promise. The world softened at the edges, preparing for spring. Nell planted the garden with Joy, both on their knees in the dirt. Beans, carrots, herbs, squash. The earth was cold but willing, holding seeds like secrets. Mama loved beans, Joy said, patting soil over a row. She used to make them with bacon and molasses. Nell's hand stilled. She sounds wonderful. She was. Joy smiled. No sadness in it now. You would have liked her. She would have liked you too. You think so? I know so. Mama said the measure of a person is what they do when things are hard. You stayed kind even when things were hard. Mama would have respected that. Nell blinked hard against tears. Thank you, Joy. 3 weeks since that Sunday at church. The town remained divided. Mrs. Barrett and her followers crossed the street when they saw them coming, but others nodded in passing. Martha brought fabric. True to her word. 2 families invited them to dinner. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Evening routine settled into comfortable rhythm. Henry carved by lamplight, working on a hope chest for Joy. Nell mended clothes or read aloud. Joy practiced her letters, getting better every day. Laughter came easily now. Nell's smiles were real and frequent. The cabin felt full in ways it never had before. Even when Ruth was alive. Different fullness, but no less real. One evening, Joy asleep in her bed. Nell helped Henry clean up from supper. I didn't know homes could feel like this, she said quietly, drying a plate. Safe. Henry set down the pot he was scrubbing. You are safe, for as long as you need. Nell turned to face him. Lamplight caught her face. Showing the girl she'd been beneath the woman's survival had forced her to become. What if I need forever? Henry's heart caught. He saw it then, clear and true. Not replacement for Ruth. Nothing would ever replace her. But something new. Something growing in the spaces grief had carved. Then forever it is, he said gently. Nell's eyes filled. She nodded once, unable to speak. Outside, the first frogs sang in the creek. Spring arriving on schedule, indifferent to human drama. Morning came soft and gold. Henry stood in the doorway, coffee steaming in his hand. Sun broke over the mountains, painting the world in shades of promise. The garden showed tiny green shoots beans breaking through, reaching for light. The cabin door opened. Joy and Nell emerged, flour dusted on their cheeks from making biscuits, laughing at some shared joke. "Papa, come see the beans are coming up." Joy ran ahead to the garden, dropping to her knees to inspect the shoots with absolute wonder. Nell joined Henry on the porch. She breathed deep mountain air, fresh earth, wood smoke, coffee, the sense of belonging. She looked at the sunrise. I forgot what light felt like. Henry watched his daughter point out each tiny sprout to Nell, who knelt beside her and listened like it was the most important thing in the world. "You belong in it," he said. "You always did." Nell leaned against the doorframe. "Not the threshold anymore. Home now." Inside. The lamp still burned from breakfast, warm and steady against the coming day. Dishes waited. Wood needed splitting. Fences needed mending. Ordinary work made sacred by having people to do it for. 3 shadows stretched across the yard, morning sun painting them gold. Henry set down his coffee and walked toward his daughter and the young woman who'd become family, not by blood or law, but by choice, the bravest kind. Home ain't where you're born, it's where someone lights a lamp and waits for you to come in from the cold. Joy looked up, grinning. "Nell says we can make bean soup when they're ready, like Mama used to make." "That sounds perfect," Henry said. Nell met his eyes, smiled. No words needed. Above them, clouds parted. Sun poured down, warm and generous. The garden waited, full of promise. Inside the cabin, lamplight glowed steady. A family, not born but built, and no less real for it.